Hey everyone, Cool Kid here, and welcome to the third season of Weird and Obscure Stuff. It's been like 4 months since the last episode, so I think it's been long enough since we busted out the rapid fire trivia. Spoiler warning like always, and without further ado, let's rock. Despite taking place on Eris, the skybox that appears during the Jordis Golem's boss fight is the old orbital skybox for Pluto. When riding the Atomocycle, selecting the Abilities button in the pause menu reveals that the bike has its own ability panorama. You can still shoot your weapons while firing Lorax's beam, for some reason. Casting Coil Horizon during Mach Rush will remove Mach Rush's mobility restrictions, allowing Gauss to run around freely. Consoles can be interacted with while meditating, and doing so doesn't interrupt the emote. The burning engine on stationary Kuva Furbolgs can set the player on fire. While in operator form, killing enemies with amphors can build up stacks of Zidon Uskos. Despite Embrace opening enemies to ground finishers, Sevagoth's Shadow can't perform ground finishers. The Ropalolist corpse in this Jupiter Spy Vault deals Tau damage on contact. If Wisp casts Dispensary while in the air, then the Dispensary itself will become invisible. The Ignis has unique visual effects if its highest damage type is gas, but heat damage bonuses like Fireball Frenzy will revert the VFX back to heat during their duration. The EFV-8 Mars has a 5-round cylinder, but when reloading, the speedloader is actually missing a bullet, only loading 4 rounds. This doesn't account for the fact that this pistol somehow has a base capacity of 15. The Stalker can spawn inside the Granum Void, and he will get stuck there if you leave without killing him. Dante's Triumph can grant Overguard to Saren's Molt decoy. Infusing abilities on certain Warframes will cause their signature sound effects to blend with their new ability. For example, here's a comparison between Nova and Limbo using Null Stars. This starting room in the Crashed Corpus ship tileset contains the best animation in the entire game. DE, please don't remove this. Gara's passive, which has a chance to blind enemies when casting an ability, can be triggered by transference. Arcane Persistence applies in Arcwing, but as no Arcwing can surpass 700 armor, it's strictly a nerf. Entering the Captura camera while Dante's Paragrams are active will cause them to float into the sky or sink into the ground. Aram Spinosa's stat page shows a damage breakdown for every single heavy attack quill, which makes it exceedingly long. By right-clicking on Sonar in Banshee's ability menu, you can see that it has an augment simply called Augmented Sonar, which is unobtainable. This augment's description reads, "Affected enemies also become visible through walls for 10 seconds. While not explicitly tagged as such, this seems to me like an unadded Conclave augment. In a way, it's also kind of a proto-Seek now that I think about it. In a similar vein, Mag's Polarize ability does not have any prompt to view augments. This is despite the existence of Counterpulse, which is an augment for Polarize. Grendel can wall hop while in meatball form. Titania's Lantern turns the affected enemy into an ally, meaning that Eximus units caught in the ability have their auras become friendly. If Grendel regurgitates a Skuldra Harbinger balloon, it will just float straight up out of his stomach instead of going towards his target. Most abilities target the enemy's torso, but because Moa heads are in the middle of their body, these abilities will headshot them, making them take 3 times more damage. Branching off of this, Mutalist Moas actually take less damage if hit in the torso, so these abilities deal half damage to them. Turret ammo in the Pareto Rebellion can be picked up by Zephyr's Tornadoes. Lavos' passive, which increases status duration with ability duration, also applies to barrels he destroys. Jetpack-wearing ranger enemies on Jupiter drop Arcwing-scaled ammo boxes. The Hyper Juggle emote causes Grendel to use the Turbis version of Meatball, even if he's not using that skin. On top of this, while the Meatball is active, the regular frame can be seen way above the emote inside the ceiling. The Platinum tossed by your Warframe in the Purchase Platinum screen inherits your Warframe's tertiary and energy colors. Chat linking the deluxe skins for Titania's Exalted weapons lets you preview them on other frames. The Kickback Sigil applies to caught fish. The Kickback Sigil also applies to weapons. Foley's Death Orb can trigger the 250 energy passive if a prime touches them, and this even applies to orbs spawned by the hostile Foley in her hunt. The Meso X1 relic has a Bratton Prime receiver in the bronze tier, despite it normally being a silver item with a value of 45 ducats. DE, please don't patch this. I can't be blamed for more shit like this getting fixed. Status immune enemies can still trigger on-status buffs if the hit would have inflicted a status effect. For example, despite the tank being status immune in its second phase, I can still build stacks of Cascadia Flare by shooting it. Self-Portrait will duplicate any items Foley is holding at the time she casts it, such as amphors. If Gen Dro copies Korra in the index, he'll summon a base Venari with default colors, even if he copied a Korra Prime. The flawed version of Reflection still has the mod's old effect of reflecting blocked damage while channeling. Because channeling is impossible nowadays, this mod literally does nothing. You can find 4 sets of flowers on the stage at Solstice Square, 1 by each additional microphone, and 1 by each of the elevated drum sets. These bouquets represent each of Flair's bandmates, who were all killed by Victor. Hildren Prime has credits strung along both her collar and her belt, seemingly taken as trophies from the corpus. When looking through the ceiling of the Orbiter in the Drifter camp, you'll find that you can't see the landing craft, though stepping outside reveals that it should be visible. The Wolf of Saturn VI cannot be summoned in most Uranus missions because of the presence of Sharkwing segments. The Arboretum room within Albrecht's lab spawns giant ghostly peregrims. When I say giant, I mean bigger than your Warframe giant. The particles from casting the Vast Untime form a giant cube. Grineer rollers can be knocked down by things like slide kicks, and they will grant a prompt for a ground finisher, but you can't actually perform said finisher. Attempting to use the Shadow Graph in the dojo's arsenal will instead bring up a button to set up a trading shop. Both the Iron Wake and Haunted Vesper Relay Captura scenes are in the Deimos scene category. The Boiler and Demolisher Boiler both have Mutalist Alad V present in their codex dioramas, but the Arcane Boiler does not. Varuna's Puppy Mode prevents hard landings. If the player has no primary or secondary equipped, then Spent Thermion RPGs won't be discarded upon reaching 0 rockets, though they will be discarded if a melee attack is used. Using the Gauss or Grendel Deluxe emo in Arcwing will cause the accompanying frame to be massive. Randomizing Lizzie's colors causes her to play a few notes. Regular Mesa's thumb is the hammer for her regulators, and her index finger is part of the barrel. While in an open world, opening the options menu during Infernalis' dodge will cause Uriel to kneel throughout the remainder of the dodge's duration. Casting Shock Trooper consumes the damage bonus built up by Volt's passive. Unlike other Takelu skins, the Fragor Takelu skin cannot be purchased. It was originally released as a reward for a gift of the Lotus Alert in 2019, and it has never reappeared since. It's possible to chat-link Immortal skins for Jade, Dagoth, and Protea, though they are not currently obtainable. In addition, you can chat-link Immortal versions of each frame's helmet, which other Immortal skins don't have. I really hope that Barrow brings these soon, because all of these skins are cool as hell. The Lotto makes a ping sound after emptying its magazine. When using split flights on the Cernos Prime, the spread types become inverted, with horizontal firing in a vertical line and vertical firing in a horizontal line. Ash's Smoke Shadow augment can make Kalimos invisible, which makes it more difficult to locate her if you have any Ferroglan sacks to deposit. If used in Hipfire, the Paragale Prime's spread is perfectly horizontal. AoE status effects can trigger the stun from dizzying rounds, and this can be further extended by using secondary Irradiate. Elytron's second ability, Core Vent, can block your own gunshots. With weapons like the Mausolon, this can lead to constant self-staggering. Necromechs do not trigger detection from Spy Vault lasers, though this is only really useful in Railjack spy missions. If an enemy has only one leg dismembered by an attack, they have a chance to play an extended death animation. Parita Rebellion missions can contain female variants of the Anarch Gladius, which have no codex entry and cannot be spawned in the Simulacrum or Captura. The portals in Sanctuary Onslaught trigger Arcane Crepuscular, which reveals that they technically make you invisible. Aminata's passive normally requires 30 hits on enemies to re-roll, but for some reason, slam attacks don't need to hit an enemy to count. On top of this, slams that hit multiple enemies will only count as one hit towards re-rolling the passive. Necros' Soul Punch Execute can bypass the spectral form of Thrax enemies, killing them outright. Noko's Sprodling form can be given Word Warden independent of his normal form, even though the Sprodling can't actually trigger it. Alright, that's all for today's video. Huge thank you to all of the contributors who submitted entries for this episode, and another huge thank you to all of my channel members for making this content possible. Thank you for watching, submit your own entries in the channel in the Discord, and I'll see you next time.